Hello, let's talk about Linux some more. We've been talking about it for the past couple of weeks, and we shall continue to talk about it for the next couple months. We are on Chapter 5 of Sander Van Voigt's RHCSA EX200. Let's dive deep, boys. So when working on Red Hat systems, you're going to need to know a couple of things. First, you're going to need to know the difference between your console and your terminal. And then you're also going to need to know how to switch between terminal and console sessions. We've done this format before. Past Steven is going to explain some stuff. And if I feel like I need to expand on it, I'll swap back over to present Steven. And we'll continue from there. We are now going to try to tackle Chapter 5, Connecting to Your Linux Systems. So, before we dive in, first we have to learn some terminology. Mainly, what's the difference between your console and your terminal? Well, let's get started. In this case, we have a console, and our console session is actually the virtual machine I spun up on a Proxmox host. So your console is equivalent to as if you were sitting in front of a computer and looking at a monitor. Your console can be either a graphical user interface, like below, or just straight up text. That leaves the question, what is your terminal session then? Well, your terminal session is anything that provides you a way to interact with your shell. So your terminal can be this actual terminal application down there. It can be SSH. It can actually be a command line only version of the console. A lot of different things can be terminal. So now that we know the difference between a terminal and a console, let's practice working with multiple terminal sessions all at once. Hello boys, and welcome back to another episode of Low Spec Labs. Let's go ahead and get started with lab exercise 5-1, working with multiple terminal sessions. So the very first step we want to follow is to go ahead and log into our Alma Linux session. We've already done that, so congrats. After that, we have to open up the terminal. So to do that, we click Activities, and we can either click the terminal down here, or we can search for term. And there we go, we have a new terminal session opened up. Once the terminal is open, we then click New Window to open up a new window inside of the terminal session. This is the New Window button. And there we go, we now have two different windows open up in one terminal session. So why would we want to use multiple terminal windows? Well, it's actually very useful for troubleshooting things. Let's walk through an example. So we have our terminal session here. The very first thing we want to do is output some log messages. So that's sudo tail-f/var log secure. And then it's going to ask for our admin password. So what did we do? We just had a continuous run or continuous update on the var log secure file. The next thing you want to do is go to our other window and type in su- to log in as our root user. All right, and now we're logged in as root user. And when we come here, you'll see we now have a new entry in that var log secure file. It's this last line right here, right? And that last line happened because we literally just logged in as root on this other session. So multiple terminals are very useful for troubleshooting issues you might be running into. Now that we've gone over virtual terminals, let's go ahead and talk about virtual consoles. What are they and how do we use them? Let's find out. In our last video, we talked about multiple terminals. Let's talk about multiple console sessions now. On Linux, by default, there are 6 virtual consoles or virtual terminals provided by the Linux kernel. Let's dive deeper into those consoles. So the very first thing we do is we log into our session host. When it comes to the Linux consoles, there are 6 provided. I know I only have 5 fingers. Imagine there's an extra one right there. So there are 6 Linux consoles provided. These are /dev/tty1 to /dev/tty6. So how do you access the different virtual consoles? Well, that depends entirely on if you're using the GUI interface or just the text-based interface. If we're using the GUI interface, we'll use the Control, Alt, and the F1 through F6 keys. And if you're using the text-based interface, then it's just a simple Alt plus F1 through F6. The key things to remember are the F keys. So we'll run through those real quick in this video, and then the next video we'll walk through some examples. So F1 takes you to your login screen. F2 gives you access to your current graphical console. So what you see below is our F2. F3 gives you access to your current graphic session. So it'll bring you back to where you were before. And then F4 through 6 gives you access to a non-graphic text interface. So basically another command line. Now that we know what the F keys do, let's do a little lab and practice actually using it. So now that we know what the virtual consoles are, let's run through a practical example together. Below we have a host spun up. Let's see what happens when we hit Control Alt F1. That should take us back to the login screen. And so I go and I hit Control, Alt, and then I hit the F1 key on my keyboard, and it took me to login. Success. So that worked great. What if we want to switch back to the console session we were in? Well, to switch back to your current console, all you do is hit Control, Alt, and F2 on the keyboard. And you see it took us back to our console session. So what happens when we hit Control, Alt, F3? Well, that opens up a new text session for us. Let's try that out. So Control, Alt, F3. And as you can see, we now have a new text console session pulled up. All right, so F4 through 6 will also do the same thing as F3. What they'll do is they'll drop you into another text/terminal window. I'm not actually going to do that one because it's just repeating the same steps. So as you play with Linux terminals, you'll run across pseudo terminals. What are they, and what are the contexts that we use them in? A pseudo terminal is basically any connection that is not directly on the console. Let's dive deep. It is now time for Lab 5-2. This is Sander Van Voigt's RHCSA EX200, if you're following along. Steps 1 and 2 of this lab are to log in and open a terminal. We've already done that. We're moving at lightning pace here, boys, so try to keep up. After that, they want us to type W, so we get a list of users on the system. As you can see, we have 2 users logged in, one from TTY2, which are current graphic sessions, and one from seat 0, which is the current logged in host or user right here. Then after that, it wants us to open up a new terminal session. So we click the new session right here. Then it wants us to become root, so we become root. Then it wants us to list our users again. All right, and when we list users again, you can see the user count. It's once again back at 2. So if you're paying attention, you'll notice our user count did not go up when we ran the W command. That's because we are elevating to root from inside the graphical session. So Linux still sees this as one session. It should be very rarely that you have to reboot a Linux server, but you should know how to do it just in case. Let's find out how. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Low Spec Labs. Let's talk about rebooting your Linux server. Occasionally you might log into a Linux server that is completely foobarred. It's got more issues than a toxic ex-girlfriend who won't take accountability. And that's okay, because unlike your toxic ex, if you want to get things working again, you simply turn things off and turn them back on again. If only people and relationships were so easy to fix. That raises the question, how exactly do we reboot a Linux server? There's a couple different options. One of them is not, I repeat, is not walking over and unplugging the power cord. You will lose data. Ask Mr. Low Spec how he knows. I've lost many episodes of Family Guy doing stuff like that. The proper way to shut down or reboot a Linux system is using systemctl. More specifically, systemctl/reboot to reboot, systemctl shutdown to shut down. Let's walk through an example. Let's say we have a Linux system that we need to log into. To do that, we log in. And then from there, we can do systemctl reboot. And as you can see, the host started rebooting. It's that easy, boys. And we're back as it's spinning back up. And there we go. We are now logged back into that host. And that's how you reboot a Windows. And that's how you reboot a Linux computer. See you next video. The most common way we're going to use to connect to a Linux server is SSH. So what is SSH and how does it work? Past Steven has spent several videos discussing that. We'll let him handle this conversation from here. I've gone over this topic before in previous videos, so we'll keep this brief. This is just kind of a quick overview. If you want more in-depth content, visit my YouTube channel where I go more in depth, or visit my TikTok channel and scroll back to about November of this year. It's going to be a couple dozen videos, and you'll find more SSH info there. So let's keep this short and sweet. What is SSH? SSH, or Secure Shell, is a protocol used to remotely manage servers. SSH provides an encrypted tunnel to send commands from one host to another, either over the internet or just over your local network. How does SSH work? Well, that is a complicated topic. It uses public-private key pairs that it sends to each host. That's not really a good conversation for this video. It's much better suited for my YouTube channel. Please go and check it out, where we will dive way deeper into SSH. Now that we know how SSH works, let's walk through a practical example of using it. This is lab exercise 5-3, using SSH to log into a remote server. Let's get started. Step 1, open up the terminal on server 1. Once you're logged in, you're going to want to get the IP address of your current server. So I do IP address, grab net, and the IP is 10.020.138. The remote server we want to connect to is 10.020.139. To do that, we do SSH, we enter the username and then we enter that server's IP address. And it's going to ask if we want to add that server's public key to our known hosts file, so we click yes. And then it's going to ask for the password for that user. Go ahead and enter that. And there we go. And then when we do an IP address and we look at the IP of the current server we're on, you'll see our IP has changed. It is now 139 instead of 138. Last but not least, we can confirm we're in a remote session by hitting the W key to list our users, and you'll see we have an additional user here, and that user is PTS1, and that is our SSH session. PTS stands for pseudo terminal. SSH is a very useful utility. One of its most useful features is forwarding graphics applications over your tunnel. Let's dive into how to do that. Oh, I'm saying that too much. We gotta switch it up here. I gotta find some new words. How does one pipe graphic applications over SSH? Well, there's two things you need. The first is to enable X11 forwarding on the SSH server. The second is to go ahead and pipe the -y flag on the SSH client. Of course, you're also going to need a graphical application to test this with. Let's walk through it together. The best way to learn is to do. First, log on to your remote host and configure SSHD. You have to be root or admin. I've already made myself root, so I'm going to do a nano/etc sshd config, and then I'm going to go ahead and scroll through, and here we go. You'll see this flag called X11 forwarding. Go ahead and uncomment it to enable, and go ahead and change it from no to yes. After that, we'll then need to restart our SSHD service, and we should be good to go on the server side. Thanks to the magic of editing, I am now on my client, otherwise known as 10.020.138. I ran an IP address to kind of show you where we're at. We're going to remote into 10.020.139. To pipe graphics applications over SSH, you have to use the -X flag. We are on 10.020.138. Let's SSH-X user at 10.020.139. This is going to ask for our password. Cool. And then when we do an IP address, grep inet, and we are at 10.020.139. So since we are on that remote server, what we can do is now run something like gvim, which is an application that's on the remote server but not on the local server. So if we search for gvim, see, it doesn't show up. But because we're on the remote server and we have gvim installed, right, and we now have a graphics application being piped over a remote server to our current one, and of course it's vim, so it works just like normal, but it's graphics, so we can, hit save if we want to. Being a Linux admin is all about knowing what tools to use and when. Let's talk about two of the most common ones you'll be using: SCP or Secure Copy and SFTP or Secure File Transfer Protocol. We're going to discuss what they are and how to use them in the next couple minutes. So another thing you can do with SSH is copy files from one host to another. Basically, we're going to be using SSH on top of other existing utilities. So the two tools to copy files using SSH are SFTP, which stands for Secure File Transfer Protocol, and SCP, which is for Secure Copy. The secure part being the SSH protocol basically slapped on top of those other two utilities. Now let's talk about how to actually use the SCP command. What is Secure Copy? Well, a couple videos ago we talked about the copy command. Secure Copy is basically copy and SSH built into one utility. Let's walk through how to use it. To copy, you first need to have some files. So let's make some files. Cool, we now have some files to copy over. Okay, so SCP is a pretty easy utility to use. Let's say we wanted to copy SCP1 over to a remote server. We would do SCP./SCP1, and then we will enter our remote server address 10.0.21.39, and then we're going to place it where we want to host it. Oh, of course we want the user as well. So we can do LSL at 10.01.39, and then we want to put it in our local folder. And then we'll enter our password. And there we go. As you can see, the file copied over and even showed us the percentage as well. Very useful utility. See you next time where we dig into how to use SFTP. Okay, and that's it for Secure Copy. What about SFTP? How do we use that one as well? What is it? Past Steven, please explain. What is SFTP? Well, just like Secure Copy, SFTP is the FTP protocol and SSH tied into one. The difference between SFTP and SCP is SCP is basically a straight command line utility, while SFTP provides you an interactive text UI. Let's dive deep into how to use SFTP. First, we start on our client. In this case, it is 10.0.21.38, so IP address, grab, and we want to SFTP as our current user to 10.0.20.139. And as for our password, and we're in. And once you're connected, you'll see a subshell with a limited set of commands. Now, let's try to download a file. We have an example file here. So the SFTP kind of works like your standard shell. You can browse it. So we would do print wd. We'd see our current directory is home/lsl on the remote server. And if we were to do an ls, it would list our files. And as you can see, one of the files we have is, so let's try to see if we can download SCP2. To do that, we would do get./SCP2. All right. And then if we were to exit and do ls, you see we now have a new file there. One of the last utilities you'll need to know how to use from this chapter is rsync. Let's find out about rsync. There is one more SSH utility we have to talk about before we finish this chapter up, and that is rsync. So, what is rsync? Rsync is a command line utility that looks at the differences between your source and your destination and only syncs the delta. So basically, it looks at the source, it looks at the destination, it makes a text file that holds that information, and then it creates hashes of those two text files. And if the hashes don't match, it updates that file. This is very useful because that means when you're syncing changes or when you're trying to copy files over the network, it only sends what it needs to send. So maybe you're copying a couple terabytes of information. It's only going to send the difference within that couple terabytes, or the files that change within that couple terabytes. Now that we know what it is, how do we actually use it? I don't know what you expect from me here. Oh, wait, past Steven. Take it from here. Hello. We last left off talking about rsync. Let's go ahead and dive deep into how that utility works. Let's go ahead and log into a Linux host. All right, you should be logged in. So we are in a test directory for rsync, and we can list all our files by doing ls-r// Cool. So now we see we have directory 1 with 10 files in it. We want to move those 10 files to directory 2. Let's use rsync to accomplish that task. Let's rsync directory 1 into directory 2. To do that, we do rsync /directory 1 and then star and then /directory 2. All right, and then when we do an ls-r/, you'll see directory 2 now has the same contents as directory 1. We have a guest here at Low Spec Labs. We've got Meech. Oh, look at a big dog Meech here. I'm gonna set him down. Oh. All right, cat break over. This is lab exercise 5-4. We are effectively going over something we've already gone over, so this should be familiar and comfy for you guys. Step 1, log into your SFTP client. In my case, this host is 10.0.21.38. So we're going to SFTP into 10.0.21.39. We then SFTP into our remote host. To do that, we do SFTP LSL at 10.0.21.39. And then we enter our password, and we're in. And you can see the SFTP shell right there. We can use the ls command to view the file contents on the remote server. So this is everything that is on 10.0.21.39. We can also use the pwd command to show our current location on the remote server. So you can see we're in home/lsl. What if we want to view the current location on our client, which is 10.0.21.38? To do that, we would do lpwd. And what that does is it shows us our current local working directory, which is home lsl rsync test. What if we want to change our local current directory? To do that, we do lcd and then /temp. And then when we do lpwd, you can see our local directory is now temp. What if we want to send files to the server? Last time we talked about getting files from it. So you use get to download, but to upload you use put. And then we're going to upload put/etc hosts, and then we're going to send this to ./temp/etc host. Helps if you spell the entire word right. So we just sent the etc hosts file to the /temp folder on this server. And as you can see, if we list /temp, there should be an etc hosts in there. Here it is, temp hosts. And let's do the last lab exercise. And that's it, boys. Thank you for watching another episode of Low Spec Labs. If you enjoyed this content, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let's go ahead and walk through lab 5-5. We're almost done with this chapter. All right. So, how to connect using public keys and SSH. Let's get started. First, we log into our SSH client. This is host 10.0.21.38. So, first things first, we switch to our root account. Then we do SSH keygen. And then it's going to ask where we want to save. We're going to save it to ID_RSA. It's going to ask for a passphrase. We'll leave it empty. It's going to ask for a passphrase again. And there we go. We just made our first SSH public key. After that, we then copy that public key to the remote server. To do that, we do SSH copy ID root. And then we point it to our server 10.0.21.39. Then it asks if we want to continue. We hit yes. It doesn't ask for this password for that server, so we enter our password. Okay. So we ran into an issue. In order to log in as root, you have to enable root login on the server. So I went ahead and fixed that off screen. Let's try that SSH copy ID again. Then we're going to ask for our password. And there we go. Our key is now copied over, and we can verify that by doing an SSH root at 10.0.20.139. And you see when we do an IP address grep inet, our server IP has changed, and we're able to log into that server without even using a password because it now has our public key. That is officially it for Chapter 5, Connecting to Linux Systems. We covered a lot of topics today. We covered SCP, SFTP, rsync, SSH, so many different topics. Please go ahead and hit like, comment, and subscribe if you like the content. Chapter 6 should be coming out within the next couple of days. It's about users and groups, so we shall see. I feel pretty comfortable with that topic, but you feel comfortable and then you read the book and you realize you know nothing at all. So we shall see.